Blake Lewis does a great job covering the Washington Redskins, of course, member of PFW, the Writers Association, and also covers the NBA. Kind enough to join me on a Thursday. A lot of NFL talk, a lot of NBA talk. What's going on, Lake?
Hey, what's going on, Q? How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah. By the way, you recognized the Welcome Back, Kotter theme, did you not?
Of course I did.
I don't know.
Of course.
We're dating ourselves. We're showing our age. All right, we'll save the NBA for last, but initial thoughts when you look at these two championships games. By the way, have you kind of I guess come back down to earth now watching that play Minnesota and New Orleans? Because I have to go back and I've been watching it over and over, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe the game ends in that fashion.
Yeah, it was almost like a walk-off home run.
I got to stop you right there. Like, I can't have you say walk-off. I can't have you say it, but go ahead. Now I'll let you go. You know my pet peeve. Go ahead.
I mean, hey, that's the closest thing you're going to see in the NFL to that was a game-winning play that ended like that. And,
unreal.
With so much magnitude, behind it. And, it had ramifications here in this area because the kid that made the play, Stephon Diggs,
yep,
is a Washingtonian. He's from Maryland, the suburbs of Maryland. But a lot of people here are very familiar with him from his days at that good counsel and then obviously University of Maryland. So, just again, what can you say about Minnesota? And we talked about this on your show last week, how you saw those two teams. You saw Minnesota, you saw the Eagles, and how they, it just seems like they were on a collision course all year. I don't care how you break it down, injuries to both teams, quarterbacks, whatever. These two teams have just been destined to play for it all. And, whoever wins is going to have an opportunity. I don't think this is a foregone conclusion that the Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl like a lot of people are talking. Yeah, they're the favorites, but I think Jacksonville will be able to slow them down a little bit. But I think in the NFC title game, I think both these teams feel really good about getting to the Super Bowl and having a chance to win the whole thing.
I said this yesterday, and I echoed it again in the 12 o'clock hour. I believe Minnesota and the Eagles, if you stick them in a room, they look in a mirror, they see each other. Like, they're mirror images, right?
100%.
You got
100%.
You got the great storylines with the backup journeyman quarterbacks and the defense, and they can run the ball, and they have wide receivers that can make plays. I just think the line of scrimmage, right, the battle within the battle. Minnesota, if anything, you cannot run to the outside against the Eagles with those linebackers. I think you got to try to run against them and their strength inside. And then conversely, if you're the Eagles, I think offensively, again, keep it simple, but also try to run the football. And you don't want Nick Foles rolling out because that's when he makes mistakes. I mean, where do you think this game will be won and lost?
I do think the trenches is going to be where it's won and lost. I mean, and that's the case in most games, but specifically in this game because these aren't two offenses right now that are going to light you up. They don't have their main cog out there, signal caller, and if you look at the Vikings, they also lost, their running back who they got out of Florida State. So
Dalvin Cook,
Dalvin Cook. So you think about just the losses that they've had on that side of the ball, and the Eagles, of course, without Carson Wentz, an MVP candidate. I still think, though, that what a lot of fans don't realize is that these are two organizations and two teams that have bought in from day one. And it's obvious why they're playing in the NFC Championship game with all that adversity. You can't have a team get this far in the year if every player on that roster didn't buy in. And that's why I think they were destined to play, because you've just seen them win games that they weren't supposed to win. Obviously, last week is a prime example. And for my money, the Eagles, for a while, looked like they could be in trouble, but they find ways to grit things out. And, yeah, this is going to be an interesting game. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing this because I'm an old-school guy. I like hard-nosed defense, and it's going to be cold and, well, maybe not that cold. It might be in the 50s, I guess, but for this time of year. But still, I think it's just going to come down to which team does not turn the ball over. I know that's another cliche, but if there ever was a game where that will hold true, it's this game, because you don't want your quarterbacks to do too much. You just want the defenses to put them in good position, and it's going to be a field position game. So I'm looking forward to it, Q.
I mentioned Case Keenum, and I was trying to draw parallels with another quarterback that was somewhat of a journeyman, and then all of a sudden started to make his peak in his prime, and I brought up Jim Plunkett, who really didn't do anything, early on in his career. Now, I know the difference is when you think about it, Plunkett was a guy that eventually went on to win a couple Super Bowls, but when he went to the Raiders, he started to peak a little bit, and he just put together some really nice seasons. Case, it's a product of quarterbacks going down and taking advantage of the situation. With that being said, and it is cliche again to say, both these quarterbacks during this game on Sunday will have to, again, make 2 to 3 plays. And I'm telling you right now, if it's Philly, you don't want your quarterback rolling out. But if you're Minnesota, you don't mind he rolls out and he improvises, but you don't want him to be careless with the football, i.e. throwing across his body.
Yeah, and that's a good analogy, too. A guy that I was considering him to is a guy that was here in this market, and that was Joe Theismann.
Yep.
He's a guy that didn't have great success until later in his career, and after 10 years, finally, get to the playoffs, Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't have to do a whole lot either. Make a couple plays here or there, but basically control an offense that ran the football down your throat. And that looks like Keenum in that situation. With the Eagles, I was expecting them to, when they picked up, running back from Miami,
Jay Ajayi.
Was Ajayi.
Yes.
I was expecting them to almost flip things and be specifically a running football team, like just really run the football over and over and over. And they hadn't really done that. And I thought maybe they were tailor-made for them to really put that emotion in the playoffs, especially with Wentz being out. And last week, remember, we were talking, and I told you that Philip Daniels, one of the defensive line coaches, had told me they're going to turn this into a brawl and run the football. And that's kind of what I saw. It was, they didn't air it out like I thought they, probably could have. They played it close to the vest, and they believed that their defense could win the game, and they did. So to me, for the game to come down to the way it did and the defense to have the stance that it did, they're going to need that again this week against Minnesota by far.
Yeah, and listen, and going back to your 1.2, field position, turnover battle, you can't have those special teams muffs and blunders, and I agree with you 100%. Both teams are buying into exactly what they're being fed, whether they want to, the Eagles want to relish the underdog role, Minnesota's trying to get to the Super Bowl and host the game, and then you have the AFC side of the ball where, right away, everyone, it seems, wants to pencil in New England. Now, I've said for the last several years, I always thought Bortles' career can be salvaged, and he's had his moments. He had 3 out of 4 very good games in December, didn't do anything about Buffalo. He didn't have to do a ton last week against Pittsburgh, but he still made the plays. He hasn't turned the ball over. That is a run-first team. They're going to get after the quarterback. I believe that they have a legitimate shot to beat the New England Patriots if they can run it, limit New England's possessions, and figure out a way from those edge rushers, get to Brady and get a couple turnovers. Because I just think if they do that, and they're hitting Brady a little bit, and if you look at it, like, he's been sacked 35 times this year. Last year, 16. Yeah. So the offensive line, that's a match made in heaven for Jacksonville. But I think we're not giving that defense a ton of credit, and right away we're saying, well, it's Belichick and it's Brady and it's New England. They're going to win easily.
Yeah, I think people are overlooking Jacksonville. And the other thing that I think it kind of helps Jacksonville going into New England is almost just being young and dumb. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that as in these guys are the majority of this team being as young as they are. They don't really know the history of what happens when you go into New England. I mean, they may have heard of it and seen it on TV, but they've never experienced it. That could work against you or it could work for you. And I think in this regard, it may work for them because they may feel better about themselves than maybe they should going into New England. And I think that, if they can keep this game close through the first half, I think, they'll believe in something that we've seen over the years. And Hugh, you and I have talked about this off the air. The Patriots are, as great as they are, always struggle in the playoffs against physical football teams.
Yeah, they start leaking a little oil. Yep.
Yeah, it's proven history. And the Ravens are a team that comes to mind that has always had success in New England with their style of play. And if that's not the Jaguars right now, I don't know who is. They're going to come and punch them in the mouth.
a caller brought up a really interesting point. He asked me how much do I think Coughlin's fingerprints are on Jacksonville, and yeah, because you got that winning culture from a head coach that's been there before, won 2 Super Bowls. Oh, by the way, beat the opponent, beat New England twice. But I also go back to Doug Marrone. You know, if it's 4th and goal, guess what? They're going for it. I mean, they're
going for it.
Yeah, they just want to let you know, okay, even if we don't get it, we're going to throw you our best punch. And I think when you have that personality and it trickles down with the coach, like a couple years ago with Del Rio going for it, the 2-point conversion against the New Orleans Saints on opening day with the Raiders. You know, he said, look, we're going to be a riverboat gambler, and we're going to live by the sword, die by the sword. That's kind of how I look at Marrone, and I think that's where you actually have to give Jacksonville a little bit of an advantage, because as you alluded to, sometimes when you're young and you're naive and you know, they take on this role as, hey, we don't care if you punch us in the mouth. We're going to punch you back, and we're going to take your best shot.
Right. And this is a game that has star power. You know, you have Jalen Ramsey. You know, what can he do, you know, against New England's passing game? You know, obviously I don't think they have that one guy that you would say, you know, Jalen, cover him and don't leave him the whole game, because they spread the ball around. So it's going to be interesting to see how, you know, Marrone and Jacksonville's coaches, how they counter him to be disruptive against the Patriots. It's going to be interesting to see. Again, you know, Calais Campbell and company, I mean, how much pressure can they get on Brady? And you called it. You know, Brady's been there to be had in the pocket, and now they're going to be going up against a legitimate, you know, front seven that's coming downhill, and they're coming with bad intentions too. So, you know, this is another game I'm looking forward to. Obviously, the health of you know, of Jacksonville's young guys, you know, as far as can they run the football, can Leonard Fournette, can he really, you know, do something against the Patriots? That's going to be key, because they have to be able to run the ball to slow this game down.
All right, before I let you get out of here, is Paul Pierce being petty here?
Of course he is.
Okay.
And I'm an old school guy. I understand why he's thinking the way he is, but I don't understand why he's thinking out loud. You know, because
you're right.
And I say this because, you don't. Sometimes you want to be selfish and don't want to share your moment.
I know.
But this isn't a moment for that. This isn't a moment to be selfish, because the organization is doing that for you. They're retiring your jersey. No one will ever wear that jersey, and every day a kid goes in that building from here to the end of, you know, wherever the Celtics or whatever, they're going to see that man's jersey hanging up there. Does it really matter to you that you have to share the spotlight for 3 to 4 minutes out of that day? I mean, come on. Enough's enough.
Well, I know.
And this you know, it sounds like you. It sounds like an old guy that still wants to get the applause at all costs. That's what it sounds.
You know, it sounds like Mercury Morris. He always has to come out of the woodwork every time a team goes from being 10-0 to 10-1. All of a sudden, he's got to pop the champagne and just show up.
Exactly. I mean, and you know, it just, again, I think, you know, you saw what Jalen Rose said. You know, a lot of guys said it is being a little petty. And, you know, we understand why he's saying that. But, I mean, come on, man. It's not like he's one of those former players just, like, you know, in obscurity right now. I mean, he's got a nice gig, you know, on the set.
Sure.
Of, you know, so he's still there. He still has an opinion that people listen to.
Exactly.
Come on, Paul. Just let it go. Your jersey is being retired, man. Come on.
Enjoy the moment. Exactly. All right, my friend. Great stuff as always. Always appreciate it. Enjoy the games on Sunday. We'll recap them next week. Always enjoy a couple moments, bud.
All right. Take care, my friend. I appreciate it.
You got it anytime. Thank you. Lake Lewis joining me for a couple moments.